Hey, welcome back to our next video. Today we're going to be doing more free AI video upscaling, but this time it's going to be cross-platform for Mac, Windows, and Linux. What you need is a computer that can run the Vulkan graphics system. So if you've got Vulkan, you're pretty much good to go. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I'm going to open up a web browser. And by the way, all these websites will be linked down below. And the very first site we want to take a look at is one that we're actually going to use, but I wanted to reference the actual root project of this, and it's Waifu2x. And by the way, thank you to the commenter on my last video who corrected my pronunciation. So it's Waifu2x. If you scroll down here, they have all sorts of information about it, how it upscales and it's different things like that. But if you come down here, here are other projects, and we're going to be using one of these other projects today. Particularly, we're going to be using the Waifu NCNN Vulkan project, which I have right over here. So you're going to want to go to this website here, the on GitHub, and again, all links are in the description down below. And we're going to use this project here. Now, right here is the releases, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And by the way, today I'm going to be giving specific instructions for Windows and also the minor tweaks you need to do for Linux. Unfortunately, I don't have a Mac, but this should give you a really good template to kind of walk through and use the actual commands that we're going to use today. Now, I've got to warn you up front that we're going to be using the command line. I know, it's terrifying to some folks, but we're going to go through in exact detail, and all of the steps are listed down below so you can follow along. And in addition, I'm going to explain what all the options in the command line actually do so you can change them to whatever you want to do. So right here we've got all of our different downloads. We've got Mac OS, we've got Ubuntu, which is, by the way, I've used this version with Mint Linux in my testing. And then we got the Windows one. I'm on a Windows machine today, so we're going to be using Windows. But again, I'll have specific instructions for Windows, and any minor variations in Linux will also be shown along with the Windows presentation, because they're very, very similar. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this Windows zip, and we are going to download it, and I'm going to throw it in my downloads folder for right now. And there's one more thing that we're going to need in Windows. You won't need this in Linux. If you want to do it in Linux, all you have to do is run the command sudo apt install ffmpeg, and that will install ffmpeg, which is what tool we're going to be using today. But for Windows, we need to come over here and get ffmpeg. And you scroll down here, there's a whole bunch of versions, right? But this is Linux, we don't want that. This is Linux ARM for like Raspberry Pis and stuff like that. We don't want that. We come down here to the Windows ones. Well, which one do we get? This is actually very important. We need to get the one that does not say shared. So we want this one right here. We do not want the shared one. We want this one. And the reason why is this version doesn't have any like external libraries or anything. So when we use this ffmpeg command, it's going to run right there. It's not going to need any sort of libraries or hunt or look for anything like that. Everything's compiled together inside the executable. And that's exactly what we want for Windows, because that's going to make everything a lot easier. So I'm going to click on this guy right here, and I'm also going to throw up my downloads folder, and right there it goes, and it's also done. Neither one of these are tremendously huge. In fact, we come over here, you can kind of see the sizes over here, so they're not too bad. So what I want to do is I want to unzip both of these. So I'm going to right click, and you can either use Extract All, which is the Windows one. I prefer 7-zip because it's much faster. And I'm going to extract to a subdirectory here. There we go, we got that one extracted. And then we're going to right click, and I'm going to come down here. In fact, I'll use Extract All on this one just so you can see. It even suggests we put it to subdirectory, which is perfect, and then it's going to hit Extract. Notice it takes a little bit of time. There you go. And it actually opens up the folder on this one, which is fine. But let me close that. So we kind of look at what we got here. We got our 2 zips, right? And then we have the folders that I have extracted. I'm going to go ahead and delete these zips for now, just to kind of declutter things. You select both of them and delete those. So now we just have our 2 directories left. So let's go ahead and go into ffmpeg first. And we're going to go into the subdirectory, and we're going to go find the bin directory. We're going to come in here, and we're only going to need 2 of these. So I'm going to select ffmpeg.exe and ffprobe, and I'm holding down my control key, by the way, so I can pick 2 items at one time. And then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to copy, because we're going to copy these into our waifu 2x folder. So I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to paste these in here. Now if you notice, so this is all the tools that we're going to need. We're going to need ffmpeg. We're going to need ffprobe, because that gives you information about your video file. We're going to need that in here a little bit. And then we have the actual waifu Vulkan program. Over here, these folders contain the various AI trainings, basically, that the AI has gone through in order to learn how to process these. And you can actually pick whichever one that you want. And the default one, by the way, is this CUNet one here. But you can choose whichever one you like, and we'll cover that a little bit later on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to select all of this, and I'm going to copy it to a folder, and this is where we're actually going to be running the program from. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to place it on my desktop. I've created a folder up here on my desktop, and I'm just going to stick it in here. Now, of course, you may not want to put it on your desktop, but I just like to keep everything all visual out here. So we are going to go in here, and we're going to copy that in. So now we have all the tools that we need copied in right there. Now, we need to make 3 more directories. Now, in Windows, case is not sensitive in directories, but on Linux and I believe on Mac it is. So I'm going to name these all lowercase, and I suggest you do the exact same, because all of my commands use these lowercase folder names, and if you're on Linux and you put in an uppercase name, then it's not going to work. The commands won't directly work. You would have to change it to the uppercase directory name. So let's just keep everything standard here. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a new folder, and the very first one I'm going to create is one called video, and that's where we're going to put our video file that we're going to process. And then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call this one frames. And this is the frames, whoops, didn't mean to go into it. This is the frames that we are going to extract out of our video. Well, why do we want to extract the frames out of our video? Well, that's because waifu only processes pictures. It doesn't do movies. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our movie, we're going to turn it into pictures, and then we're going to upscale it and then turn it back into a movie. If you watched my prior video and we were using the waifu GUI, that's exactly what that program did. However, people found that that program only ran under Windows. It's from someone in China, and they weren't too sure about the security of it, although it is open source and everything. So we're stripping all that away. No more GUIs. We're going to use the command line, but again, we're making this as simple as possible. And then finally, we need one more directory. So we're going to right click, we're going to go make a new folder, and I'm going to call this one scaled. And scaled is going to be our upscaled images. After we extract out our frames, they go into frames. And then when we process them and we upscale them, they'll go into scaled. And then we'll use that directory to create our final video, which will end up in the video directory. Okay, so now we have all the tools that we need to get started on this process. So let's come over here, and this is a little trick for Windows, by the way. If you're on Linux, you'll want to open up the terminal at this point. If you're on Windows, you can go up here, click on the directory name, like you were going to copy it or something like that, or maybe go to a different directory, but just type in CMD, Cat, Mary, Dog, okay, and hit enter. and that's going to open up a command line window, and it's already in the directory that you type CMD on, which is super handy. That way you don't have to like open up this and then go CD and all those, find it and whatever stuff like that. So now we're actually ready to start our processing. Now, one thing we need though is we need a video. So I'm going to come in here to video, and we ain't got nothing in there. I have that same video that I used last time. I'm just going to use it again, and it's called Skeleton Frolic here. It's a 1937 video here. There we go. And you can see how small it is in this window. It's because it's a very low resolution file. All right, so we're going to copy this in. So I'll just make a copy of it here. So we'll leave the original out there. There we go. Now, on my command line, I'll need to reference this video, and that's a really long name right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to rename this to video. And that's just going to keep our command lines a lot shorter. You can call it anything you want, but if you do, you'll need to change the command lines. And if you put spaces in there, or you might have to put quotes around it, or all that sort of guff. So just name it video. In this case, .mpeg4. Now, if it's not an MPEG-4, like it's a MOV or something like that, that may well work, but you'll need to change the command lines where it says video.mp4 to video.mov. However, if you want to keep all the commands exactly the same, just convert your video to MPEG-4. Also, this works if you're having any sort of problems from ffmpeg of actually reading your video. It can only support certain standards. It's an open source program. It's, covers a fairly broad standard, but there's so many different video codecs and everything out there, it can't cover all of them. If you need to convert your video, there's several ways of doing it. You can do it online, stuff like that. If you want to use a free utility that's open source, you can use Handbrake, and I'll put the link in the description again. And you just want to convert your video to something very standard like H.264, which is kind of a nice standard video format. So let's get started with our very first command. The very first thing what we're going to use is the ffprobe command, and I'm going to paste in a command line prompt here. And by the way you paste in on Windows command line is you hit your right mouse click, and it will paste the line that you have copied to the clipboard into this window for you. And I'm going to be doing this throughout the whole session to make sure I don't mess up any of these commands. But it just says ffprobe. We're going to be in the video subdirectory, remember that we created, and we're going to be looking at the video.mpeg4 video file. Let's hit enter on that. And I really don't care about all of this stuff up here. I mean, it just has some interesting information, like for instance that it's H.264. Okay, remember that I said that's a really good standard, very standard to use. Here's the resolution of the video, by the way. You can tell it's very low resolution. But here's what I'm looking for. 29.97. That is the frames per second, or frame rate of the video. We're going to need that because we're going to need to tell ffmpeg what video speed these pictures that we're going to extract were from, what the video file was before. Now you can actually change the video speed, but you'll need to reference the first one. So the original one. So I'm going to make sure I go over here and I make a note, and I'm going to put in 29.97 as our frames per second. That way I can paste it in to our command line a little bit later on. All right. So we've got our very first command done. And now we need to extract all of the images. So let me go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste this in here, and then we'll talk about it. Oops, it didn't copy. Let me try that again. There we go. So this time we're going to be using the ffmpeg command. -I means input, and so our input is going to be in this video directory, video.mpeg4. And then in the frames directory, remember we created the frames directory up here, I'm going to create a whole bunch of pictures and they're going to be called frame, and there's going to be a total of 6 zeros. So it'll be a number that's basically 6 characters long. That's going to allow you to have quite a few frames out there. Now, I would highly suggest, this process takes a long time, that you use the smallest video clip that you can. So go ahead and edit your video clip down before you put it in here and start processing it. Now, by the way, you can actually tell ffmpeg to have like a start frame and an end frame, and you can, there's actually command line options for that, but we're not going to use those today. What I'm going to recommend is that you simply edit your video so that it's only the part that you want to upscale. All right. Now, by the way, notice we've got this is going to be, they're all going to be called frame, and then up to a 6-digit number. And then right now I've got BMP. Now, BMP is going to be large, but sometimes they're really quick to process, especially on slower machines. So you may want to leave that BMP, but I'm going to change it to PNG. Now, PNGs are smaller, but because they're compressed, they will take longer to process. So that's kind of the trade-off. Do you want to go BMPs or PNGs? From now on, I'm just going to stick with PNG in this example. But if you want to change that to BMPs throughout all the examples, so anytime I paste in and it's got, it's referencing a PNG, you'll need to change it. If you want to do that, you certainly can. If it processes quicker on your machine significantly, hey, it might be worth it. But I'm going to stick with PNG, so we're just going to be doing that. And now I'm going to hit enter on this. And it is processing away here. It's done. And if I come over here to my frames directory, and I'm going to switch this over so we've got like a list here. Notice I've got frame 1, frame 2, so on, so on, so on. We've got quite a few items down here. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom. And so it's a total of 1,774 frames. So that's how many frames are in this video. So let's go back out of here. And then we're going to do our next step. And our next step is we're actually going to extract the audio out of our video. Now, if you don't want the audio from your video, that's fine. You can just skip this step. But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to run this ffmpeg. Again, the input is video subdirectory, video.mpeg4. And then in the video subdirectory, I'm going to create a new file called audio.mpeg3. So I'm going to hit enter on that. And it's going to process it. And if we go into the video, now all of a sudden we have an audio file, and that is just the audio from the movie. We're going to need that when we could put the movie back together again. So now we're actually up to the AI scaling part. Thought we'd never get there, right? So I'm going to right click and I hit copy here, and we're going to paste this in, and we'll talk about it. So this is at waifu2x ncnn vulkan.exe. Okay, our input's going to be in the frames directory. Remember, that's where we copied our frames to. Okay, and then we've got our output is going to be in the scaled directory. Remember this one we created right here. And we'll have 2 parameters here. The first one is a noise reduction parameter, and you can set this to several things. I realize I gave the wrong information here. -1 is no denoise, 0 is the default, and 1, 2, or 3 are each of the higher denoise options. So I like 1 or 2, something like that, typically in my videos, but you can play around with this number and see if you like the results or not. The second parameter over here is the actual scaling, and I'm saying 2. Now, if you say 2, what that's going to do is it's going to make everything twice as big as before. So our video is 322 by 240, so it'll be, 644 by 480. Okay, so that'll be our new video size. Now, again, you could change to some other number. You could make this 4x, and it would be 4 times larger in scale. Okay, but we're just going to do 2x here. Part of that's for speed, and we're just going to hit enter on that. And now it's going to start working here. And this process may take quite a while. Remember, we've got 1,770 some odd pictures to process through, and we're doing this AI upscaling. So that's going to take a while. So we'll be back whenever this is done. Okay, now we're all done. That took about 5 minutes, and let's kind of see what happened over here. I'm going to come over here to our scale directory, and if you notice, we have 1,174 items in here, and these are PNG pictures also, if you kind of notice the size here. And if we compare that to our original frames, well, of course, these are smaller, but there's 1,774 of them. So what it's done is it's taken this lower res image and it's upscaled each and every one of them and placed it into this folder right here. So now we're ready for the final step, which is actually to piece our pictures back into a video. So we're going to come over here, and I've already pasted in the command, and it is ffmpeg. And the -f here and everything is just kind of a placeholder actually, because we are going to use an entire directory. Notice this -i means input, right? We're going to use the scale directory, and here's all of our pictures. And then we are also going to use that audio file that we copied out earlier. And then we are going to create a new video using that 264 codec. The CFR, by the way, is a quality setting. So this is a trade-off between quality and speed. You could set this to as low as 0, which would mean it would be lossless, as they call it, but there'd also be like no compression, and so the video would be huge. So you want to set, and this is a number between 0 and I believe like 51 or 52, something like that. You really don't typically want to get to 0, nor do you want to get it to the 50s, but you can play around with this number somewhere in the middle. I'm using 16. I find that a nice compromise between quality and size. And then in the video subdirectory, we're going to have a new file created. It's going to be called Upscale MP4. Now, so normally we just hit enter on this, except we need to make sure we check our frame rates. And our frame rates, I pasted in here, are 24, and that's totally incorrect. So I'm going to use my arrow key, and we're going to go all the way back over here, especially the original frame rate needs to be the frame rate of the video. So I'm going to put 29.97, and then the output one over here also can be either needs to be 2997, which would be exactly the same, or if you wanted to change it, here's your chance, because this second one here is going to be the output video frame rate. So if you wanted to make it a 60 frames per second or 30 or 12 or whatever, that's where you would change it. So you almost assuredly will need to change this from that number that we found out at the very beginning from the ffprobe. So I'm just going to come out here to the end of my command line. I'm going to hit enter. It'll take just a second to process here. There we go, and we are all done. And if we come over here and we go into our video directory, now we have our original video. Remember, we called it video.mpeg4, and here's our upscaled version right here. And notice the size of it as compared to the original right there. Of course, it's exactly twice the size, just like we told it to upscale. So that's all of the basics, and I know I went through it very slowly and very methodically, but really all you need to do is just paste in each one of those commands exactly as I showed you, and again, everything is down below in the description. The only thing you 100% will need to change is the frame rate, so make sure you change the frame rate, and then you're good to go. So that's really about it. I will also have all of the Linux commands down below, command lines for Linux terminal, and so they're just very minor changes. Sometimes they want a period and a slash in front of program names, stuff like that. Otherwise, it's exactly the same stuff. Also, too, I'll probably do a little bonus video where I'll throw in some additional commands and things like how to use the different AI models and things like that. But that's it for today, and so I will talk to you next time.